On Sunday, October 28th, 1973, a young truck driver would show up in a hospital in Bahia Blanca, Argentina, in a complete state of amnesia. The man did not know his name, where he lived, any family, and had no personal, identifiable information on him. The confused hospital staff examined the man to see if he had any head injuries, but other than a bad headache, there was nothing evident. The man was found wandering aimlessly around asking for help, and soon a good Samaritan would take him to the hospital. In several days, the man's memory would come back, and soon he would realize he had an encounter with something strange that night. In this episode, we will explore the alien encounter of Dionisio Llanca. On the evening of Saturday, October 27th, 1973, around 6 p.m., Argentinian truck driver Dionisio Llanca woke up from sleeping and began getting ready. Llanca lived in a small cottage by himself in Calle Chubut, which was around 10 minutes from Bahia Blanca. Since he would be driving all night, he ate dinner around 10 p.m. and then around 12:30 p.m. headed out the door to drive toward Rio Gallegos, which was around a 2-day trip. Llanca was used to driving all night, and on this trip, he would be hauling construction materials. Right before leaving, Llanca would see his right rear tire was low on air. He considered changing it, but thought it could make the trip. This decision would change his life forever. Shortly into his drive, Llanca would notice the tire was much worse than he thought. He had no choice but to pull over and change the tire. At 1:15 a.m., on the dark, deserted road, Llanca began pulling down his tools and began to change the tire. It was cold and extremely dark, and Llanca was upset he didn't stop and change it at one of the gas stations he had passed. Then behind the truck, a bright yellow light would suddenly light up the entire road. Llanca was busy trying to fix the tire, so he didn't realize the extent of the light at first. He thought it was just another truck with its high beams on. However, the brightness intensified, and Llanca soon realized this was something else. The light then changed to blue. Llanca tried to get up, but couldn't. His legs were paralyzed. He was on his knees, but was able to turn his head. As he did, he would spot a strange oval-shaped craft hovering. Even more shocking, though, to the right of his shoulder behind him, 3 humanoid beings stood. The beings were around 5 feet tall, with blonde hair, and had tight-fitted silver coveralls. They sported yellow boots and had long black gloves. They had no belts or helmets. There were 2 men and 1 woman. The beings looked human, except their eyes. They were more slanted than ours. Llanca would also note they had large foreheads as well. The beings would stand and talk among themselves in a strange language. It sounded like a strange chirping sound. Still paralyzed at the time, Llanca was unable to get up. Things would get even worse for him, though. He soon realized he was unable to speak or move his face. Then nothing could prepare Llanca for what happened next. One of the beings grabbed him by his collar and easily lifted him into the air. Llanca tried to talk and communicate, but still wasn't able to. As he was suspended in the air, one of the other beings stepped over, and it stuck some sort of device into his finger. Llanca would state this didn't hurt, but it did produce a little bit of blood. After this, he would pass out, and this is where the mystery begins. Sometime between 2 to 3 a.m. on the same night, Llanca would wake up in a rail yard. This spot was around 6 kilometers from where Llanca's truck had broken down, and his truck was still there. Llanca began walking toward the lights and would soon come upon a road. He would appear to wander for some time and eventually end up in the city. The man who dropped him off stated Llanca was mumbling and described him as being catatonic or like a robot. That morning, Dr. Ricardo Smirnoff, a forensic surgeon, would examine Llanca and recalled the strange incident. Smirnoff would state, "I am a forensic surgeon. I had rotating duty on Sunday the 28th. About 9:30, Dr. Alpotero at the Spanish hospital called me and said that he had a curious case. I arrived at the hospital around 10:15 and saw a young man of about 25 or 26 years of age in a total state of amnesia. He could remember nothing of his past. He did not know who he was, where he was born, who his parents were, or anything about his past. He cried continually and asked what town he was in. The doctor told me that a man had left him at the hospital after encountering him wandering in the center of the city like a robot and asking everyone he met where a police box was. At first he thought he had an automobile accident on the road. He changed this as he had no injuries. When I touched his head or came near his hand, he drew back instinctively as though it would produce pain. He had a bad headache in the right parietal temporal area. I notified the police and had him admitted to the municipal hospital. In the days that followed, Llanca's memory would come back, or most of his memories. He was able to recall the encounter with the beings and regained his memories around his personal life. Still, it's not known what happened after he blacked out and got to the rail yard. The distance was over 6 kilometers, so this raises the question, did he walk there, or was he put there by the beings? Mathematically, it's possible he walked there, even in his catatonic state, as a person could do this walk in 1 hour and 15 minutes, or possibly even quicker. If you recall, he encountered the beings at 1:15 a.m. and was in the rail yard sometime between 2 to 3. That said, we should point out, being in a catatonic and paranoid state like he was, this probably would have slowed his walking speed. That said, it's surely possible that he did walk the walk by himself, and there was no abduction, but it's not known. As for the encounter, this case appears to have many credible aspects. First, the beings approached the man on the highway, and it involved a bright bluish light. This is a scene we see all too often, and crafts approaching people on desolate roads we see time and time again. Also, the beings appear to be Nordic aliens. All three are reported as having blonde hair and large foreheads, as well as tight-fitted silver suits. Those are characteristics many report when seeing these beings. One interesting aspect of this case is the chirping sound. Not too long ago, on a case we covered on this channel, the 1967 Riri, Idaho alien encounter, 2 young men would report this strange characteristic. While driving on a desolate highway, they would encounter strange beings who communicated through chirping. It's a strange coincidence, although the beings in this case did not appear to be Nordics, as they appeared to have wrinkly skin. That said, perhaps these 2 different species share a common communication manner. It's said that Llanca is a simple man with no interest in UFOs. In the days he was interviewed by ufologists, he was said to be extremely somber and did not smile once. Hospital staff characterized him as traumatized and innocent. Of course, skeptics will argue these symptoms are easy to fake, and he may have done this for the attention. Still, by all accounts, this was the only close encounter of the third kind that Llanca had, and he was able to move on from his experience.